Hi there, this is Clovis from Kinematic Lab. In this tutorial we're going to talk about the dots line object. So let's go into UI Toolkit here and in the dots category. You have a few objects here and this is the dots line that we are talking today. So I left click here and then I left click and drag in my viewport to create the line. So you see that when I drag my mouse here on the grid, the line is growing. Okay, if I release the left button, it stops. I can create all the lines. Okay, and I do right click to stop the creation. Okay, I will delete these two lines and concentrate on this one. So what do we have here? First of all, we have a choice over the mesh type, so over the dot mesh itself. So by default it's a circle, so you can change its radius, the number of segments. Okay, it can be a square where you can change the length, the width, the way it's aligned. You can have a sphere like that with a change of radius as well and subdivisions, or a custom mesh. So for that you have to create a separate object and pick this. So this cube is now my dot. Okay, and you can change its size. But let's go back to the circle. So what you see here now is the variations. So to use that, you have to check the on-off option. Okay, and what it says each 10 dots, in this case, you will have a variation. So each 10 dots, my radius can be smaller or bigger, for example. Okay, but it can be each 2 dots, each dot, each 3 dots, 4, 5, 6, etc. And you can change the dot's radius, the number of segments here, or if it's a square, you can change its length, etc. So that is pretty useful to make a line like that, with some kind of measuring lines. Fine. Now let's talk about the parameters. Here you have 4 different modes. So the first mode is standard. So it's basically a straight line. So you have all these parameters to control it. So you have the height. So the height is controlling the height of the line. And as you change this height, you see that the dots are updating automatically. So they always try to keep the same spacing between them. And this spacing is controlled by this distance value. So if you increase it, you can have less dots in the same height, but if you decrease it, you can have a lot more dots. Okay, so I'll make a variation each 5 units, so it's going to make a nice line like that. Okay, and you can have a fixed count. So I said that when you changed the line, the dots updated automatically using the distance, but if you check the fixed count, now the distance here changed to count, and this is a precise value which will never change. So when you change the height, the line is going to sort of extend itself, but the dots are not going to be, the number of dots are not going to be changed. Okay. Now you have this slide value, so you can animate this to make your line change like that, okay, slide along the line, so the variation will slide basically. So if I put a keyframe here, okay, you see that this can be animated. You can change its percentage here from 0 to 100, so basically it's the maximum height value you put here, okay, and this percentage fill this height. So you can animate that as well. So let's say I'm using the circles and I want to have more distance so I can see these circles. I will remove these variations and animate the percentage here. Fine. And of course all these parameters are accessible in the curve editor here, and you see that I put some keyframes already in the percentage, but you can apply a controller which is, for example, a noise float, okay, and we want this value to go from 0 to 100, the maximum percentage, so put 100 here. And when you play this animation, you see that this line is changing, okay, because its curve really looks like that. And you can generate different curves by varying the seed, okay, or it's the speed like that. That's a nice effect. So let's remove this controller. So you can also invert this percentage, so from the back to, from the end to the start, or from the start to the end, okay. You have a delete value from 0 to 100 again to delete some dots. So if you click on the seed button, you generate another random value. So if this way of disappearing is not what you want, you just change the seed and you have a different pattern. And you can animate this value as well. So right. And something else is that this delete value is also influenced by the slide. So you can really make something cool by sliding this as well. Okay. Now let's talk about the anchor points mode. So before that I will create some helpers. And in this mode, okay, you see that some parts of this UI is changing. You have a list here where you should pick some objects. So with this plus button, I will pick my objects one by one. And what you see is that the straight line we had before is now straight but between these points. And I can move these helpers, okay. This line is always connected to them. You can also move them up to change the order of these points. Okay, and now what you see is that each time I change the distance between these points, the line is updating itself again and always seems the same, okay? So some dots are added to the line, but if you check the fixed count, Okay, you see that now it's stretching, and you can change the count here as I did before on the standard version. You also have an up vector, so it's the direction where each dot is facing. So for now it's facing the z axis, but it can face y or x, but it really depends on the direction of the line. Okay. Because it also can be 3D like that. So depending on the case, these ones will help you. The percentage here changes the percentage along each segment like that. Now let's talk about the spline mode. So for that, as you guess, I have to create a spline. So I go to spline mode and I pick that spline. So now all my dots are aligned on this spline, okay, and I can animate the spline as well, okay, and change anything to it. So again, you see that when I extend or shrink the spline, the dots are updating to fill it, okay, with the same distance between them. So again, this is controlled by the distance value, okay, or it can be a fixed count, and when you move the spline knots, okay, it stretches with it, so no dots are added. So in this mode you also have the slide, so you can animate it, okay. You also have the percentage that you can animate as well, and the delete value, which can be animated too. If you animate the slide, or you can animate this, the delete value directly to make it disappear or appear. And now let's talk about the circle mode. So this is quite easy to understand. So it makes a circle. You can change its radius in this axis or this axis. So if you want to make a bigger circle, you have to change both like that, or you can just wire them together with using a wire parameter. You can change the number of dots here, okay. You can slide. If you made a variation, you can slide the variation and animate that. You can change the percentage here. So it's gonna be fun if I use the squares, align it differently, add more of them. Okay, so this makes a nice sort of nice grid, okay, and you can slide these values, okay, change the number here to be more precise, change the percentage. You can invert this as well. You have the delete function too, and you have a rotate value here. So for the moment this rotate value seems pretty similar to the slide, but we will see later that it's not. Now let's talk about the numbers here, numbers parameters. So I will have to check this option to show them. Okay, and now you see that I have my numbers, so I can choose the font here. So these are all the fonts installed in your Windows. So each time you change, the number will be a bit updated. You can change this number size, the offset, which make them go away from this circle. And each value here says that you can have a number each dots, so each one dot or each two dots, 3, 4, 5. So in my case, because I have a variation of 5, so each 5 dots, the dots is bigger, I will add each 5 here to have a number on each of these bigger lines. Then you have a start and end value, so basically that is the start number or the end number. Okay, so in my circles, of course, the start and end are at the same place, so you only see the end. And you can revert that as well, so have some negative values. Okay, you see -50. So now if you slide, you can see that only the dots are sliding and not the numbers. But if you rotate, everything is sliding together. So you can, for example, if you have a 0 here, you can put this 0 on top instead of being here by default. The follow option rotates the numbers to follow the rotation of these dots. Okay, you can align them from left or right of the dots. Okay, and change the rotation angle, so for the moment it's facing in this direction, but you can make them rotate and read them in another way, or do not follow at all. Okay, but still be able to read them, like in a clock, for example. Okay, and you see that these numbers will be applied always depending on the choice you make here. So for now we are in the standard, so this is just a straight line, and all the dots have a number here, so each five dots we have a number, but you can say each dot, each 2, 3, 4, 5, it's exactly the same stuff. You can change their position, so left or right, make them rotate. You can of course rotate this if you need to have these numbers on the right side. Okay. And that's the same, for example, if I use a spline again or the anchor mode, it's gonna behave exactly the same way. In the case of a spline, of course, all the numbers are also aligned, okay, but you can make them not aligned. The same on the anchor points, etc. Also, the never delete here is checked. So what it does is even when you delete some dots using the delete option, the numbers will stay here, okay? But if you uncheck this, the numbers will be deleted as their dot is deleted. Okay, so now let's talk about the end object. So you have to pick an external mesh here. So let's create something like an arrow. So I'll make a simple triangle. Like that. Change its pivot point. And I will pick this mesh as an end mesh. I will rotate it so it fits this case. So the end mesh here is placed at the end of the line or at both ends here, like this option. You can change its size, and if I change the percentage here, the end object will follow. You can force him to follow the direction of your line or not. Okay. And in the spline mode, you have access to each knot, so you can have an end mesh on each spline knot. So it is aligned to this one, but you can add another one if you want to refine the line. Okay, you can have another dot here. So this end mesh, depending on the mode you are, is always behaving the same way. Okay, it follows your line. If you are in anchor mode as well, so you just have to pick some points. Okay, I will just change the number of dots here, and you see that when I change the percentage, the dots, the end meshes are progressing with each line. So let's go back to the standard mode or the circle. Okay, and that's the same here. Now let's talk about the materials quickly. So basically all the objects in UI Toolkit have material ideals set for you. So usually it has multiple ideals. So you have to apply a multi-sub-object material to it in order to show all these materials. So for now it is black, but I can apply a material in the ID1, so which is the dots. Another one in ID2, which is the numbers, and the third one in ID3, which is the end meshes. But you have a control here to add more ideas on the dots, so you can have multiple ideas on the dots. So if I check this and say I want 3 ideas here, you see that the numbers and the end meshes becomes black just because the first 3 ideas now are dedicated to the dots only, and then you have nothing else in this material for the numbers or the end meshes. So I will just change these colors so you can see what happens. Okay, you see that we have now 3 colors, okay, red, blue, yellow, red, blue, yellow, red, blue, yellow in a sequence which repeats, and you can slide this sequence, so animate it using this slide value, and you can put some keyframes here to really animate that. And the next materials are gonna be the number 4 in this case for the numbers, okay, and the number 5 for the end mesh. Fine. I can also add a vertex color on the dots. So if I check the fade option here and click on the vertex color toggle, I will just remove the end mesh for now. You see that now we see the vertex color because of the vertex color toggle. Okay, again on off. It is from black to white. Or from white to black, and this wire color can be used in a material. So for example, if I apply a material to everything and use a vertex color map, I can use this vertex color map inside a mix map. So that's the easiest way to see it. And I will put that in the diffuse, okay. And the vertex color from black to white is gonna blend. It's gonna be the map that blends between the color 1 to the color 2. So let's put color 1 here and second color there. And if I render it now, you see that it goes from blue to yellow, and it can be inverted, okay, blue to yellow in this case. So that's it. It was pretty long, sorry, but this object is quite complex. So see you in the next video. Cheers.